in to this episode of Cardinal Film Fights. I'm your host and judge, Mark Rollins. As you may remember, I was dressed as Fix-It Felix for our Halloween episode, and I'm still dressed like Fix-It Felix for this Halloween episode of Cardinal Film Fights. Today, we have Haley, Brandon, and Skylar. They're going to briefly introduce themselves, give their name, their year, and their major, and then we'll get into the question. Oh, before I forget, we have Vaughn on the facts and Paige on the timer. Yeah. So let's get into it. We're going to start with introductions. We'll start with Brandon this time. Go Skylar, and then Haley.
All right. So I'm Brandon. I'm a sophomore here at Ball State, and I'm a journalism major with a theater minor.
Hello, my name is Skylar Wilson. I am a telecommunications digital video productions, and I'm a senior, and this is going to be my last year, and I'll be off to the real world and suffering more.
Sorry for you. And Haley.
I'm Haley. I'm a sophomore, and I'm a telecommunications digital video production major.
Represent.
That's right.
So as those of you who have watched us before may remember, our format is we have 1-minute introductions in which our fighters give their answers to the question, explain why they chose them, then we go into our 5-minute forum where they tear each other apart, build each other up, and then we finished up with our 30-second conclusions in which they take all their arguments, wrap it up in a nice, neat little bow, and give it to the world. So, for today's question, underrated. A lot of things in this world are underrated. Horror. A lot of things in this world are scary. But what do you get when you put those things together? You get underrated horror. And then I'm going to tack on movie on the end of that because that's also in the question. And most is at the beginning. So let me put that all together. We're tackling most underrated horror movie. So for our introductions, we're going to start with Brandon, then go Haley, and then Skylar.
All right. So one night with my friends, I was stumbling upon Netflix just looking for bad horror movies to watch, and then I see this one called Creep. And we watched it, and it was surprisingly spectacular. So Creep is a movie about this guy who is hired by this weird, creepy guy living on an estate to film him as a day in the life for his son because he's going to die of cancer soon. But then throughout the movie, we learn that he's a really creepy, psychotic guy who likes to dress up as a wolf named Peach Fuzz, and it scares the crap out of Aaron, our main character. And it turns into a stalker movie, and it had me on the edge of my seat the entire time, and every time I watch it, it's fantastic. It's a found footage movie, and it just feels and looks different than most. There's not as many jump scares, and when they are, they're fake for the real one at the end that actually really gets you.
Okay, I picked Would You Rather. It's very obvious that this movie is highly underrated, in my opinion, with a 57% on Rotten Tomatoes. And just to give you the premise of the movie, the main character, played by Brittany Snow, has a brother who is dying of cancer, and she can't afford for him to get the treatment that he needs. And she ends up hearing about this man who wants to hold a dinner party, and a bunch of people who need financial help end up at this dinner party, which goes horribly wrong, as you can assume. And it's a big game of torture like Would You Rather. It's really different than what you would think it is. You know, I feel like Truth or Dare just gives horror movies with old childhood game names a bad name, but it's a lot different, and the twist at the ending is spectacular and just makes it a really great film.
So I go, okay. So I picked the movie Hereditary. Despite it being a very recent film, it scored a 89% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and scored a 62% from audience. And I could totally see that as this being one of my favorite movies of the year, while also my worst movie experiences of my life. Granted, though, this is not like your average horror movie. This is a very much of a slow burn as it builds up each scare one by one, and then at the end, all shit goes haywire. But even during my film experience, audiences pretty much most of them just didn't get it, and they were not expecting this kind of movie. Like, legit, people were around me were talking about it, saying, what's going on here? I'm just like, dude, if you've been fucking paying attention to the movie, you would know what's going on. And legit, someone actually got from the seat and walked out of the movie. Not only is this a good horror movie, this is just a good movie in general. It has spectacular cinematography and a great score, and all while great acting from Toni Collette, and I'm hoping she gets nominated for Oscar.
All right, let's go into our 5-minute forum.
So I think found footage films get a bad reputation.
Bad.
Yeah,
rap.
really bad reputation. We're kind of sick of them. But this one, you don't hear a lot of people talking about it. I go online, I look at top 10 list of horror movies, never see Creep on here, and I'm really surprised because I know that the Rotten Tomatoes score is up in the 90s, I believe. And people usually like cliches, like cliche audiences like cliche stuff, so you'd think a lot more people would like found footage, but this one is just so different from most.
But that's the problem I have. The Creep is like the jump scare is like they kind of like there's a false sense of scare from each jump scare, which for me, the way I view horror movies is like it's okay. This is gonna be very childish here, but the way I view horror movies is like sex. You don't blow your load too soon. You gotta work your way up. So whereas Hereditary, it takes its time. It teases. It just slowly builds up and continues adding on to the disturbing factor and the creepiness. Not only that, Hereditary does something like it plays with your expectations, especially the marketing with the film is like playing off. It's like it's a creepy daughter, like kind of creepy child thing. But in reality, it's not that. And something that I also love about Hereditary is like it's not just all about the scares, but there's a legit story drama to it that really builds up on the fear of your like Hereditary, like some aspects of your family history seeps down to you. You get the worst aspects of it as well.
So, what I see for Creep, like when I was researching Creep, and I have seen the movie as well, and I think it's a great film, I didn't ever find a bad review. Like, I know that not a lot of people have heard of it, but at the same time, it's like the people who have it has always been rated highly. I couldn't find anything against it. For Hereditary, I don't know. I know that some people were very disturbed about it, but I also just heard a lot of great things about it. For Would You Rather, I saw a lot of bad reviews, which I thought was really interesting because I just think it kind of has the psychological mix. It's kind of like Saw. It has like the psychological mix and the gore all mixed together, but not too much to make the audience like disgusted, but still like make them think.
See, I think that's the problem with me. Is like for me, I don't like for me. This is me speaking. Horror is very much subjective here, so it's kind of like hard to decide which is a good movie, but like which is like underrated because anyone can find things disturbing. But the way I see my movie Hereditary is like there's more to it than just the scares. There is like a serious deep drama connection to it, and then you also can like rewatch the movie and get like different notice like different things that you didn't see before, like see like, oh my God, I didn't see that part from the beginning, my first viewing. But whereas from Creep, I've seen clips of it, I've seen trailers of it, and I am interested in watching it. But the one thing that gets me bogged down by it, it's a found footage movie. And I'm not saying that all found footage movies are bad. Blair Witch Project is one of the best ones I've seen. And I think Creep might be up there as well. But the problem I have with it,
what's your response to
well,
that?
it's a found footage movie, but it's also kind of a character study. And I think the best horror movies are ones with really good characters because characters are supposed to drive the story. And this one, and it's only two characters in this whole movie. There's a phone call with a third, but it's only two characters, and you're never taken away from them. And when you are, it's frightening because you don't know what this one character is going to do. And it has an excellent performance from Mark Duplass, who plays the Creep. Who just you see him in comedies, but then he comes into this and it blows me away with the role.
But then there's a problem, it's a found footage. Like my problem is like the technical side of things. The movie kind of looks cheap. Like I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like all found footage movies are bad because they look cheap. But whereas with Hereditary, you have like incredible cinematography. And it's consistent throughout the entire film. It's played out as being like little doll houses as each room, and it's remained consistent with that the entire time. And Toni Collette fucking killed it. Like she legit like carried this movie on her back. Even then, the script was solid enough, and everyone around her was great, but she
Kaylee,
legit
I'm going to give
knocked
you
it
the
out
last
the park.
20 seconds.
Well, I definitely just don't see the other Creep and Hereditary being as underrated in a sense, because just there is like a larger audience that loves those films, and the way that they were made helps that even more compared to the.
We're going to do 30-second conclusions. Let's see. We're going to start with Haley, go Skylar, and then finish with Brandon.
Okay, so basically what I was trying to say from all of that was I feel like Creep and Hereditary are not underrated in a sense. I think Hereditary is more than Creep because, like I said, I couldn't find any bad reviews of Creep, but for Would You Rather, it just was highly underrated compared to the great plot it was given, the twist ending, and all the psychological horror mixed with the gore that it has within its plot.
Skylar?
So Hereditary, like we kind of like take advantage of horror movies nowadays, as we expect just jump scares. It's all style but no substance. Whereas Hereditary, there is substance. You can watch this movie and not be only like, this is a good horror movie, but this is just a good movie in general. And whereas the audience is like, I feel like most of the audience members that I've been with, like, just don't get it. Like, they just only want the jump scares. They want the cheap ass horror movies like Paranormal Activity and The Nuns and Annabelle, all those movies.